Well, Heidi ho, my peeps. I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful sunflower embellishment. Not quite sure how big it is, but here's my hand. So it's a fairly large embellishment. And I've been working on perfecting this for about a week, and I think I've got it finally to where I like it, and now I want to share it with you. Okay, so you start making it by making your flat disc that will form the center of the sunflower. Now you can start with a magic ring or a chain of 5 stitches, and what I'm going to do is chain 5. My magic ring is always messy looking, so if you know how to make one and you're comfortable with it, go ahead. If not, you're going to start with a chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you'll also notice that I do not crochet correctly. I crochet as if I am a left-hander trying to crochet right-handed, and so if you crochet, ignore my technique because it's very bad, but I get to the same end. So you join after you've chained 5. You join the last stitch to the first by just making a slip stitch. And so now you have a ring into which you are going to make 12 half double crochets. I start my half double crochets with 2 chains. That equals my first half double. Now I'm going to make 11 more for a total of 12. Again, my half doubles look a little bit weird, but it ends up being the same as a regular crocheter's half double. So I'm fumbling a little bit here. So that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. I'll come back when I'm done with my so I've made my 12 half double crochets in the ring. Now I'm going to join my 12th stitch with my first stitch by simply going into the hole that's formed between the 2 chain stitches and the second stitch. So I just simply make a slip stitch to join. Now the next row is pretty simple as well. I'm going to half double in each of the 12 stitches, so that's going to end up being 24 stitches total when I'm done with the second row. So the way I do that is to make my first stitch, I do 2 chain, then in that same space I'm going to make a half double crochet, and in the following space I'm going to make 2 half double crochets, 1, 2, and I'm going to continue that pattern all the way around until I've completed 24 stitches. Alright, now I'm at the end of row 2. I have 24 stitches in my round. Now I'm going to connect with a slip stitch into this first ring here that's made by the gap between the first 2 chains and that second stitch that went into that first stitch in the previous row. So I simply chain, or rather slip stitch. Now to start row 3, I do the same as I did before. I chain 2. That's my first half double crochet. I go back into the same space. I do another half double crochet, so that's 2 essentially half doubles in the first stitch. Now I do 1 half double in the following stitch. Sorry, I keep falling out of frame. And 2 half doubles in the next stitch. One half double in the following. Two in the next, and so forth all the way around the ring. So it's 2 half doubles in one, 1 half double in the next, and you continue that pattern all the way around. Okay, so I've just completed row 3 which gives me a total of 36 stitches in the row. Now I'm going to work on row 4. Row 4 is the last row. I've already slip stitched into my first space here, so I'm going to make 2 chains for my first half double. I'm going to work another half double in that same space. Now the next 2 stitches are each going to have a half double in them. So that's the first and the second, and the following stitch will have 2 half doubles in the same stitch. 1 and 2. Managed to mess that one up. Let's redo that. Oh, I see what I did. I hate it when that happens. And the following 2 stitches here will each have 1 half double, and you complete that entire pattern around row 4 until you get back to the beginning. And I'm going to do that right now and come back to you. Okay, so now the brown disc is completed. We have a total of 48 stitches around the 4th row. To finish this off, you just go ahead and slip stitch into that first space and clip it. And I finish off, my finishing off is pretty simple. I just pull this all the way through and cinch it down tight. Now we're done. What I'm going to do before I start the next section, though, I am going to secure my ends so that they're not in my way when I'm crocheting the next part. So first I determine which side I want to show as the front, and I believe it's this side I want to show as the front. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my ends through to what I've determined as my back side. I'm simply going to weave them through with my crochet hook. And then we'll move to the next step. Okay, so here's the back. The ends have been woven in a little bit. I secured it just with a simple knot. And now we're ready to move on to the next step, which looks like this. When the next step is completed, this is what it's going to look like. And what I've ended up doing is made the beginnings of the petals that go around the outside. Now these are going to make up the larger of the 2 petals. Let me bring this back and show you. What you see here are basically the centers of these larger petals. As I crochet these larger petals and move towards around the sunflower, I will crochet a small petal in between each of the 2, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Okay, so here we go. We've got, like I said, 48 stitches around the outside. You end up with 8 petals because 6 goes into 48 8 times, so we're going to move around this disc in groups of 6, and that will give us a nice even spacing between each of the petals. And this is how you do that. This is how I do that. So I start by pulling up my beautiful sunflower yellow yarn, which is the Karen 1 pound, the super cheap yarn from Walmart. I love this yarn. It feels, as a really dry hand, it feels good. It's not scratchy. It's just really nice for cheap yarn. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 chains that I've made. Now I'm going to chain 2 more, and I'm going to slip stitch down the other side of this chain 4. I'm going to skip the first 2 because that'll form a little loop at the top. Now I'm going to slip stitch into the 4 remaining chains. And what this is going to do is form like a little stem sort of that I will be crocheting around to create those large knobby petals that I showed you earlier. So now I've crocheted, or rather I've slip stitched into those 4 chains. So that's basically what that looks like. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into the following 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to repeat this action here directly up from that 6th slip stitch. So again, we're going to go up 6 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going to slip stitch down, skipping the first 2, down 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've completed another little stem. Now we're going to go ahead and slip stitch in the following 6 stitches. You're going to do that all the way around until you've made your last little stem. And I've gone all the way around and I've completed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the little stems. Now in order to finish up this row, I should have 5 stitches left in the disc, because this is stitch number 1, and then 5 more would make 6, and so forth. So to make it all work out mathematically, you end up with 5 slip stitches. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so that completes that first round. That's the back. This is the front. And now we're going to continue and make these big petals and the smaller petals that form the last row, the last petal row. So let me show you how you do that. Okay, so let's take a look at the front and we can see the stitches much more clearly. So here is basically stitch 1. This is all done in 1 stitch. Then we have the 6 stitches between, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then I'm going to show you. So first I will go ahead and make my stitches up and around here. So I'll make that first big petal. Then I'm going to slip stitch over 3 stitches. I will make my small petal between the 3rd and the 4th stitch, and then I will slip stitch over the following 2 stitches, and that will put a stitch in the center right here of my 6 stitch space. So it'll go slip, slip, start the stitch in stitch 3, finish it in stitch 4, slip, slip, and then we're going to go back here. Now you can see that we've got, let's see, We've got our 4 stitches up that we're going to work. We're going to work stitches in the center row, and then the 4 stitches down we're going to work. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, so first up, you're going to slip stitch into the first chain in that chain 4 stem that you made. So you're going to slip stitch into that. Now you're going to make a single crochet. Ignore my single crochet, it looks funky like all my other stitches, but you just go ahead and do a single crochet in the following stitch, so that's stitch number 2 in that chain 4 stem. Now you're going to do a half double into the following stitch, which is chain number 3. So you can do a half double. Now you're going to do a full double crochet in that 4th chain. So here's my double crochet. Alright, now in this little loop that you form by these 2 stitches, you're going to work 5 double crochets. So you kind of have to mess around and find that center part. There it is there. Okay, so now you're going to work 5 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've worked them all in that little top 2 crochet loop. I've had to join my yarn, just ignore that. I'll work that in later. It's actually coming at a really bad spot, but that's okay. Now you're going to work your way back down. So starting in the top at chain number 4, you're going to do a double crochet, and chain number 3 will be a half double crochet. Chain number 2 is a single crochet. Chain number 1 is a slip stitch. Okay, now we're ready to move across and make our small petal in the center. So we're going to slip. Now I want you to notice something. When I do my slip, I'm only doing it in the top ring of the slip stitches. I'm not taking up the entire double thickness of the slip stitch. I'm only going into this top loop of the slip stitch. I'm leaving this bottom loop on purpose because we're going to be doing stitches into that bottom loop as our final step in this flower. So again, only work in these top loops. So let's slip stitch over 3, so that's 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to make a small petal, and the petal is going to consist of a double crochet, a triple crochet, another triple crochet, another double crochet, and a slip stitch. So here's our first slip stitch into that 3rd stitch in the center. Now we're going to form a double crochet, and we're going to do that by just chaining up 3. That's our first double crochet. Now we're going to make a triple crochet in that same space. Again, I've got a crappy technique, ignore it. We're going to make a triple crochet into the following space. You only pick up the top of that loop. of the following stitch and a double crochet in the same stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch in that same stitch, which completes our center petal. Now we're going to slip stitch over 2 more. That will bring us up against our next stem, which is here, and we're going to do the same thing that we did in this petal. In this petal, again, we're going to slip stitch into chain number 1. We're going to single crochet into chain number 2. We're going to half double into chain number 3. My tension is so tight that sometimes it's hard for me to work my needle up. Gathered up too much there. Alright, so that's going to be a half double. In chain number 4, we're going to work a full double crochet. Now we've reached our little loop at the top. We're going to work 5 double crochets and work our way back down again. When I get back down here, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you this again. Right, so I've completed the large petal number 2, slip stitch, single crochet, half double, double, then 5 doubles in the loop, double, half double, single, and slip. So that's how you make the symmetrical petal. Now we've got our 6 slip stitches across, just like we did in the first one. We're going to slip stitch across the first 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Now in this 3rd stitch, we're going to make 1 double crochet and 1 triple crochet. Like so. Now we're going to move to the 4th stitch and we're going to make 1 triple crochet and 1 double crochet in that same stitch. So that makes a nice symmetrical smaller petal. We're going to finish it by slip stitching into that same stitch. So that is slip stitch, double, triple, move to the next stitch, triple, double, slip. So that gives us a nice symmetrical smaller petal. That will give us 2 more stitches to slip into. And now we've arrived at the next stem, which we're going to work just like we did the first 2. So this is what it's shaping up like to look like on the front. And I'm going to go ahead and finish this up and show you the next I've completed all my petals, big and small. I've fastened off somewhere back here. I've fastened off and tied. Here we go. So now I'm going to work from the front, from this point forward. Now, as you know, there are 48 stitches around this last row of the brown. So we're going to work each of those 48 stitches. You can start anywhere you want. And what I'm using for that center ruffle that you see here, the center ruffle in the orangey colors, I'm using the Caron Simply Soft yarn, the ombre yarn, and it is in color gold ombre. Okay, so this is how you finish it up, starting at any stitch you want to. So let's start right here. You're going to slip your needle down into one of the stitches, one of the brown stitches, and that will be between this row and the top of the other row, just anywhere in there that you can slip your needle. You're going to join your ombre yarn with a chain using both the tail and the regular section of yarn. That way, like I said, you kind of lock in this tail. Now you're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and actually that was chain 1, so that was chain 1, then 3 more makes chain 4. Now you're going to slip stitch into the next stitch over here, and you're going to slip stitch that, and that makes your first little ruffly piece here. Now you're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to slip stitch into the next brown stitch over, so that's just a little slip stitch to join it down there. And now you're going to chain 4 again, and you're going to do this for 48 stitches all the way around this flower. And that's how you're going to make your little ruffly inner edge. And that's what it begins to look like, a little ruffle like that. So work your way around, and we'll come back and take a look at the finished product. Okay, and here we are, we're done. That is the little ruffle on the inside. If you wanted it to be bigger, you could, and it's easy to do. Instead of crocheting 4 chains and then connecting it, you might want to crochet 5 or even 6, and it'll cause this orange ruffle to be bigger. Okay, so now the last thing you're going to want to do is embroider your sunflower seeds into the center of your sunflower. And that's pretty simple. All I did is I made lazy daisy stitches, which I will show you how to do in a minute. I did 5 in the very center, then I did 1 between each of the 5s in the next row up, and in the following row, which ended up being the 3rd row, I tried to do 2 between each of these 5. So you have 5 in the first row, 5 in the second row, and I believe 10, it ended up being 11, but 10 or 11 in this following row up here. And I think that does a pretty good job of suggesting your sunflower seeds. So that's simple to do. I just have a length of kind of a light oatmeal-y looking yarn. I'm using this yarn here. It's the Red Heart Super Saver in the color Aran Fleck, as in Aran sweaters, you know, from Ireland. And I like it because I like the kind of mottled look. I've been messing around with this, so I've actually knocked off a bunch of the flecks. But anyway, all you do is try not to cough while you're doing a video. I just make a nice big knot in the end of my my yarn when I start from the back here, and I like to run my yarn. Here's the center hole that we're going to be working through. So what I like to do is sort of run my yarn under a stitch and then through the center hole. Then when I pull it, I don't pull it real tight or I'll pull the knot right through. I just pull it enough so that it kind of catches. Turn it over to the front. So now you've got your yarn coming up through the center hole of your disc. Now all you do is you just go ahead and you make lazy daisy stitches. And what I do is you go through the center hole again, up through the top of that first row stitch, around, and very lightly pull it closed. Now to secure that stitch, you run your needle at the top of your little loop. You pull that through gently, and you have your first lazy daisy stitch. Now, I try to make them more or less even as I move my way around this first row, and I just kind of eyeball it about where I think they need to be in order to make a fairly even 5-stitch little kind of starburst of sunflower seeds. And so there's the second one, and the third one will come in about here or so, about like that. Now I'll go for number 4. They don't have to all be the same size, just more or less. Because you know, when flowers are, in nature, nothing is completely symmetrical. You're always going to have variations from side to side or in your radial symmetry. So that's kind of nice if you make them just a little bit different. Don't stress about making them all the same size. Just more or less. So that's number 4. And then here is number 5. Okay, so I'm done with that first row of sunflower seeds. Now I need to work on the next row up. So that was row number 1. This is going to be row number 2, right up in here. And the way I do that is I put my needle through, and I bring it up at the bottom of that row number 2. Like so, and now I make 1 stitch in between each of the first 5 stitches. So that's 1, and again, be careful when you're pulling this through. You don't want to pull it through too tight. Sometimes you get these little funky mess ups like that, just kind of loosely. That's 1, this will be 2, that's 2, and then it'll be 3, 4, and 5 around. And then for your last row, you're going to want to work, as you can see here, you're going to want to work 2 stitches in between each of these 5 in row 2. So that'll give you 10, maybe sometimes 11 stitches. And that's it. That is how you make it. If you want to bling it up with sequins or whatever, feel free to do so. What I do is I take a gold sequin, I stack a tiny little black sequin in the center of that. See if I can do it for you on camera more or less. Like so. And then I use, like that, and then I use a little gray clear bead to secure it. But this doesn't need bling. I just happen to like bling. So there you go. That is, in broad terms, more or less how I make these little sunflowers. If you have specific questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will answer them. See you guys later. Bye.